Personal growth is a paradox. It's a messy, beautiful, and imperfect process. It's about understanding that you can be both flawed and brilliant. It's about finding strength in vulnerability and consistency in small daily actions. We all know the feeling of disappointment. That mix of doubt, anger, sadness, it's a bitter pill we all had to swallow at some stage in our lives. The core idea we'll be exploring today is this. We're constantly striving for perfection, for an ideal version of ourselves. But what if our true power and most profound peace lie in embracing our flaws? That is the paradox we'll unpack today. Welcome back to the Paradox Experience podcast. This time we explore the beautiful contradictions of life. This episode was inspired by the previous episode where I spoke about spirituality, science, and soul, and how are they combined through the lens of Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Brian Keating. Today we're diving deep into a topic that many of us grapple with. The journey of personal growth, the challenges we face, and the surprising comfort we can find in our imperfections. This episode is inspired by the incredible work of clinical psychologist Dr. Julie Smith, whom I recently watched on YouTube and TikTok, and few thoughts of my own that's going to be a bit of a bonus that I wanted to add to this episode. For anyone that would be interested in Dr. Smith's work, I will leave her TikTok account name down in the description. I wanted to build on some of her insights and weave in some of my own struggles and learnings. The core idea we'll be exploring today is this. We're constantly striving for perfection, for an ideal version of ourselves. But what if our true power and most profound peace lie in embracing our flaws? What if our true growth comes from the very moments we feel we are falling apart? That is the paradox we'll unpack today. If I could humbly ask for anything right now, it would be to ask all of you, dear viewers, to subscribe to the channel, like and comment. Without you, what I'm doing won't make much difference. My promise is to make every episode bigger and better. It's to make sure you get the best possible information, reviews, interesting news, and knowledge you couldn't possibly get anywhere else. So please, click that subscribe button. Thank you, and back to the episode. I'm sure many of you have felt it, that intense pressure to always be on, to be the best, to stand out from the crowd, to be a visible success. We see it everywhere, on social media, in the news, and in our daily lives. Dr. Julie Smith had a fascinating insight that really resonated with me. She spoke about how we are fundamentally a tribal species and how our modern fear of rejection is deeply rooted in our primal need to belong. When someone criticizes us online, or when we feel like we're not part of the group, it can trigger that same ancient fear of being cast out of the tribe. This make me think a lot about the pressure to be a superstar in every aspect of life. I've come to realize that it's completely okay to not always stand out of the crowd. It's okay to have a private life, to have smaller, more intimate goals than others. The quiet moments, the private victories, these are just as important as big public achievements. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is to step back and simply exist, finding contentment in a life that isn't broadcast for everyone to see. Speaking of feeling like you don't belong, let's talk about something I brought up in a previous episode: imposter syndrome. That feeling that you're a fraud and that at any moment someone is going to figure you out. It's a feeling I'm all too familiar with, and it often goes hand in hand with another big challenge for me: consistency. For a long time, I would be stuck in a loop of not finishing tasks. I'd have these great intentions and bursts of motivation, but they would just fizzle out. I would start things, but rarely finish what I started. But two things really taught me about consistency and seeing things through. When I was maybe 24 or 25, I think, I decided to write a book. It was an idea that just, popped into my head out of nowhere. I had a dream about a man being trapped in a room with no windows or doors, and it inspired me to write a science fiction book or a novel based on this dream I had. Um, this is the book, but I'm not going to go into details about it maybe some other time. This was possibly a way of expressing myself, my feelings I had as a young man trying to get into a role of an adult and achieve success in business, love life, maybe start a family and make sure they have everything they need. As a man who is trying to be his best version of himself and trying to reach for the stars literally can be a tricky and rough path full of twists and turns, and the road to perfection is hard until you realize that you will never achieve perfection because we are imperfect creatures. But that's okay. People like Dr. Smith say this. Or just being able to grow older and contemplate on your life and choices you make can have a huge impact on how your future will look like. And then there was a gym. The gym taught me a different kind of consistency. It wasn't just about physical strength, it was about showing up for myself, even on the days I didn't feel like it. It was about building a habit, a ritual that reinforced the idea that I can finish what I start. It taught me that sometimes pain is good because it makes us alive and teaches us discipline and enhances our brain capabilities to endure pain in real life situations. It's also good for your physical health, obviously. So my short story with the gym was that I would just do normal, gym, and doing exercises with weights with my friends from school, and then it turned into more advanced practice when I switched to calisthenics and I started to do more complex, um, exercises. And I was very happy about myself. I wanted other people to see me as a prime example of motivation and how commitment can turn you into a better version of yourself. And I was happy with myself. I was healthy. I was happy. And when obviously life takes its toll, I don't really practice calisthenics as much as I used to. And I was able to do all the crazy things like handstands and human flags. I was able to do push-ups while doing handstand and stuff like that, which I really enjoyed. And it was great feeling because a lot of people, they weren't able to do those things. So I was really proud of myself. But obviously, like I said, life takes its toll and a full-time job and, looking after my family, and a bunch of other things that I do, um, just made me unable to practice calisthenics as I used to. But I still like to exercise. I still like to keep my body and my mind healthy. So healthy body equals healthy mind, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And these experiences showed me that consistency isn't about being a machine. And a lot of us are turning into those because we want perfection. But it's about building a muscle of commitment. And this brings us to a crucial point about how we navigate our lives and ambitions, the difference between values and goals. Dr. Smith's work touches on this, and it's a concept that has truly changed my perspective, among other things as well. We often get caught up in chasing goals, getting a new job, buying a new car, achieving a certain number of followers, but what if we're chasing the wrong thing? I've come to see it this way. Values are our life expectations. Values don't end unless you don't have them. There are people who don't have any values. They may shift once or twice in our lives, depending on our life's choices and events, but they shape us to who we are. Goals, on the other hand, are steps to reach them. We set out goals to make our lives better, to learn new things, to start a business, to be a better father or mother or friend, to be better in sports. For me, a value might be growth or kindness. A goal might be reading one book a month or volunteering once a week. The goals are the concrete steps I take to live in alignment with my values. When I get stuck or lose motivation, it's often because my goals aren't truly serving my core values. This reframing has given my life so much more purpose. But the biggest purpose in life for me is my family, my close ones. I want to be better for. So what are your values and goals? Let me know in the comments. Now let's talk about some of the most powerful tools we have for our own well-being. The first is something we all do but often undervalue. Sleep. Sleep is a powerful weapon that heals our body. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity for mental clarity, physical recovery, and emotional resilience. Dr. Julie Smith also shed light on the cause of overload and stress. She said that a lot of people are trying to live up to an impossible ideal of perfection, which I already mentioned. We often turn to quick habitual fixes like grabbing a drink or a snack for instant relief. But the things that truly work in the long run, like sitting with and feeling difficult emotions, are often the hardest to do in the moment. So sleep is very important to be able to reset your mind and reset, your whole body and get ready for the next day. So therapy, she noted, can be a great tool for understanding these patterns. This brings me to something else that has been a game changer for me: breathwork. It's a topic that has been gaining a lot of attention, and for a good reason. In my previous episode, I talked about Dr. Joe Dispenza, who also talks about the power of breathwork in transforming our state of mind. And I've also been learning from Andrew Huberman, who explains the science behind it, how it's good for your heart and how it can reduce stress and anxiety. He breaks down the exact techniques, which I highly recommend looking up. And I'm going to show you a quick video of him where he explains it in more details. So go ahead, watch it, and I'll see you in a bit.
Inhale through your nose and then exhale all the way. So that's one. You're going to repeat that 4 times. Okay, so inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale 4 times. And ideally, you're inhaling through the nose and you're exhaling through the mouth. Then you take a 5th inhale as deep as you can through your nose. Fill your lungs as much as you can. And if you can try and expand make your stomach go out while you do that, that means that your diaphragm is really engaged. So
I want to be always honest with you all, and especially with young men listening. Studies show that young men struggle with many things in today's society. One of those are emotions they experience. I've often struggled with talking about my emotions. I think we can sometimes be wired to bottle things up, or it might be just a man's nature. But learning to open up and process emotions through practices like breathwork or taking advice from a professional like Dr. Smith can make our relationships with the people we love so much stronger, and for a good reason. As I mentioned, Dr. Smith, her following in 70% is women. The rest are men. So that speaks itself for how men, um, they don't really know, or they don't really want to talk about their emotions. It's about being vulnerable and finding a new kind of strength. But that doesn't mean we should not embrace our manhood. Being a strong, healthy, goal-oriented, and idea-driven man is something to be proud of, in my opinion. Especially these days where a lot of media and politics talks about toxic masculinity. I think we're all familiar with that term. There are a lot of young men struggling with this pressure from a society. They struggle to find a life partners. They have difficulties in finding their own place in life. So they get down, depressed, unable to cope with themselves. In my own experience, that is a road to misery. Embrace your masculinity. Learn from your ancestors who endured so much. We live in happy, relatively peaceful times with access to anything we want. We can be whoever we want to be. We can go out there and search for information and knowledge for free, just there in the internet. We can travel whatever we want. Our ancestors lived in the much harder times. It was Daniel Priestley who said that, and I think it was a very powerful statement, that we have access to everything. We can do whatever we want at a flick of our fingers. We can get access to any kind of useful information, whether we want to start a business or search for um, mentors, or learn from other smart people. Any kind of thing we want, we can go and do. But imagine yourself living in those times of struggle, war, poverty, disease, no technology to back you up, no bigger access to food or clothing as well. These men back then had to push through those difficulties for themselves and for their families, their wives and kids, and their masculinity was embraced. But masculinity without kindness and treating others without compassion and dignity is definitely wrong, and that's why young men need to constantly learn, gain knowledge on how to treat others with respect. They need to struggle to be shaped and formed into a strong but stoic, open-minded individuals who know how to treat others with respect and dignity. Let's be real. We are not perfect, and that is okay. We are created with differences and flaws, and we need to embrace them. That's what makes us unique. But this doesn't mean we should be ignorant. Constantly learning and developing our skills is important, and not being complacent about the world around us. Our brains are wired for automation, to feel comfortable with what we know. And I'm stating the words of Dr. Smith right now, but it's completely true, and I hope she'll forgive me. But doing things we are not comfortable with and pushing through those barriers, even though it feels scary, builds our confidence. It makes us better people for ourselves and for the people we love. And this is also an advice to young men. This is especially true when we talk about failure. It's okay to lose. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not always win the argument. I failed many times in something I felt was important to me, or I was let down by a person I was close with or whom I loved, and I felt shit. We all know the feeling of disappointment. That mix of doubt, anger, sadness, it's a bitter pill we all had to swallow at some stage in our lives. But guess what? After today is tomorrow, and every next day is every next day is a mystery. I'm going to share a quote with you. You have a power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Especially for young men and trying to understand what Stoicism is, go and look up Marcus Aurelius and his insights, teachings, and brilliant mind, and develop your inner Stoic within. I highly recommend for you to go and do that. Now, when I'm older, I realized that all of those bad situations I have experienced in life turned me into what I am today. They didn't stop me to overcome my inner weaknesses, to push through, keep my head high, and just keep going forward. My future is yet to be written, and so is yours. Finally, let's talk about relationships. We all dream of a perfect love story, but there's no such thing as perfect love. Relationships are hard. They are about showing up every day, that struggle, those rough patches you go through with your partner. If you can overcome those problems together, it only make you and your relationship stronger. It's a shared journey of growth and vulnerability. So, as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this. Personal growth is a paradox. It's a messy, beautiful, and imperfect process. It's about understanding that you can be both flawed and brilliant. It's about finding strength in vulnerability and consistency in small daily actions. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Paradox Experience. If you've watched this far, I so much appreciate it. You have no idea. And I wish you all the best in life. And if this episode had any value you and helped you in any way, please don't forget to subscribe and like the episode. Until next time. And remember, the greatest strength isn't in perfection, but in the courage to be flawed. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.